This is Union Matters with Nicholas Thompson. Please welcome social justice advocate Nicholas Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to Union Matters. My name is Nicholas Thompson, and I am your host this evening. We're just going to continue our conversation with discussing anti-racism issues. And Union Matters is really a platform to not just deal with issues surrounding the labor movement, but also issues within surrounding social justice issues. So thank you so much for joining us, and let me get right into that. So unions have always been a force for equity, fair treatment, and economic security, the voice of the voiceless. Unions have been and continue to be an important force for democracy. Our union, one of Canada's largest, represents approximately 200,000 workers across Canada. From passport to immigration to taxes to parks, our members do it all. Our union has won many victories for our members. But tonight, I want to go behind the curtains. Union staff employed with our union dues play a critical role in supporting our elected officials who advocate on our behalf. Our union employs approximately 400 workers across Canada in various functions, primarily to help it achieve its mandate to the membership. Recently, and this is going back a few months, I learned, and many of you would have heard, that the union staff was on strike. And they were without a contract. And I was shocked. I was actually disturbed and quite confused that union members were on strike. And the irony in that is that the union often calls on employers to settle wages before the existing contract ends. So I would have thought that the union would have been a high standard. But that has proven to be, I've proven to be wrong. Now, it made me question a little bit here. How are our union's very own employees begging for their dues? And that's when I began to take a closer look at the relationship between the union and staff, and that's when I learned about widespread issues within the labor movement itself, of female employees being harassed, and serious racism and white supremacy issues within the union itself. So how does the union represent us on these issues in the workplace? And they're struggling internally to address these issues. I've learned of a culture of abusing staff and a toxic environment, which has left staff morale at an all-time low. Staff describes to me the union as very toxic, saying that racialized employees are often subject to racist and colonizing behavior. A 2018 internal report summarized employees' views and provided recommendations to the union on addressing these issues within the workplace. And it said, quote, one of the summary of employees was that, quote, too much politics and interference from the political leadership, and that, that there must be a mechanism to create specific special measures for racialized and indigenous workforce for attraction, retention, advancement, support, and to monitor participation and results. That was one of the recommendations from this special report. And that equity, diversity, inclusion, respectful workplace, training for all staff, including awareness, sensitivity, anti-oppression, equity group info, white privilege, workplace bullying, inappropriate behavior, workplace violence, respectful workplace, harassment and discrimination, encourage ongoing personal and individual learning. That's taken directly out of this 2018 report, which was 2 years ago. However, racialized and indigenous staff say they continue to face racist and colonizing behavior. An example of this was when a Black employee recently shared their views on an internal staff newsletter about amplifying Black voices. Having the courage to share their lived experience as a Black person is on its own very commendable. The view highlighted the need for change in the union and that the makeup of the union's executive was pretty much all white. Those were the views of that particular employee, and instead of the union leadership seeing that as an opportunity, and that's what leadership is, recognizing employees' concerns as an opportunity to lead, as an opportunity to demonstrate strong leadership skills. However, in this case, the union's leadership was not having any of it. And it's something that we face in the workplace as well. I recently was subject to being called, well, you're using abusive and harmful language that is inconsistent with the employer's code of conduct, simply for respectfully advocating on anti-Black issues. So I'm quite familiar with that. We face that in the workplace. On the employer side, staff are saying that they also face that same issue within our union, who is supposed to be advocating for us, who issued several statements about addressing anti-Black racism and racism towards Indigenous people and racialized people, who've issued several statements to address that. So we're at this point now where we're continuing to see clear examples of systemic racism, and we're not seeing concrete action to address it. And when people speak out, they're often ostracized or they're placed in a position where their livelihood is being affected. So the union's leadership was not very happy that this employee shared their view, their lived experience, and a comment was made, which is very disturbing. A comment was made to that employee. And it goes something like this. I am speaking to you. I am not speaking to you as a Black person, but as an employee. And you need to act as an employee. You need to act as such. Okay? So, in other words, I can simply zip down my outfit and take off my Black skin and act as an employee. And it's comments like those that employers do not recognize the damage and the impact of those comments. Comments like those are very far-reaching, and it supports and upholds systemic racism, deeply embedded systemic racism. Now, this comment and comments such as "I don't get Black Lives Matter" is part of that systemic racism that employees face. We face it in the workplace, and staff are facing it in the union, and it has to stop. In 2018, the union's top brass told employees at a conference that they will not tolerate any racist acts towards staff. However, it appears that that isn't holding much weight, because we're seeing time and time again that systemic racism is thriving within our union, that our union dues are allowing to function, right? So as union members, we are outraged to hear these reports from the staff employed to take care of our needs with our union dues. So how can our union represent us on these issues when they have a poor track record of doing the same internally? Why are there so many issues internally with staff? I am taken aback as to how the standard of all standards, which is, I would think, the union, because we call on the employer to do all of these things, right? So that means that we must know better to be able to call on the employer to do better. So we want to have an important conversation tonight on addressing these issues, and specifically delving into how do we address these issues in the labor movement. I'm going to bring on some of my colleagues in the labor movement, and I'm going to start with Sean. Sean McNeil, he's a social justice activist. And Sean, what's happening in the labor movement? How do we fix these systemic racism issues?
Thanks for having me back, Nicholas. I enjoy our conversations always. We were talking obviously a couple weeks back about an issue specific around a union event and some resistance within the union movement. And I have a couple key thoughts to share tonight. I'll find opportunities to park them in here. I guess where I'll jump off with is, the union movement is not immune to the social challenges and the social trajectory that we as a society and a nation are facing. So that perhaps that seems obvious to some people, maybe it sounds confusing to others. As a union movement, we are just a body of people who are working within. We go to work, we come home, we have families, we have lives outside of the union for sure. Most of our members are at the best kind of passive observers of the unions, and they engage the union structure, meaning their local leaders, regional leadership, and staff at the moments where they need to. Obviously, contracts, if they have a grievance that they need to file, but the rest of the time, maybe they read the newsletters, but they're not paying attention to it in the same degree that you and I are, and other people who are watching tonight. But as a union community, meaning all of our members in any union, we're not immune from the broader issues of society. So if there are issues in society with respect to reaction against social progress, reaction against movements like Black Lives Matter, we have to assume that those things pervade our union as well. How we decide to address that, or our decision to address it at all, does require us to actually talk about it, right? It requires us to have open conversations, just like we're challenging people in broader society. You know, the unions are often a space where you'll have a union leader stand in front of a camera in front of the nation or in an interested audience and challenge those people to force a conversation about something, force a conversation about race in this example. And I think we need to do that as well within our union structures. And we need to be thinking constantly about rebuilding those structures around a changing society. So of course, unions have, in Canada, most unions have relatively strong anti-harassment policies, anti-racism policies, specific training on racism, specific policies and procedures for what to do if somebody is harassed or is engaged with in a racist manner. Yes, those things exist, but we also have to consider that this discussion really started, even before I was born, right? 30 years ago or more, some of these discussions have started. Some of these policies are 10 or 20 years old, and we need to be constantly talking about whether they are meeting the needs of today, or do they meet the needs of yesterday when they were created. And we have to consider that in a union movement, or in a union, our formal decision-making structure often gets boiled down to occasional large conferences where everybody comes together as delegates and makes the big decisions, like, for example, new language around anti-harassment or anti-racism. And then the rest of the time, that decision-making is filled in by a small group of people that we have elected and entrusted to make those decisions. That creates some challenges because things are moving very fast in today's world. And I'll be curious to see what those, will we actually look at changing those structures as we move forward? Because, having large meetings every 3 years to make big decisions, 3 years is a long time to go these days in between events. But in the meantime, it's the structure that we have. And so, making use of things like what you're doing with kind of grassroots, organized and cooperatively organized discussion groups to critically look at these issues and to support union staff, because they are key. I'll flip it back to you for now. I do want to talk about union staff and their relationship to employees, but hopefully some of that resonated.
It certainly does resonate, Sean. So we're at this critical juncture where many staff tell me that the union is at an all-time low, and there's a lot of interference, and that they're not able to carry out their duties. They're not. They don't feel like coming to work. And as a union member, I'm, and as an activist, I'm really deeply disturbed about this. Sean, can you talk a little bit more? Because my simple mind, my simple mind is having a difficult time understanding why union staff who are facing so much trouble from our employer. I share a few more comments for our listeners on why this is happening with a body that's supposed to have more moral authority, right? Who's supposed to have a stronger moral compass and a more ethical compass, right? Why are we facing these issues? What is white supremacy? What's the play here on all of that?
Yeah, so for myself, I am a bit of a big systems thinker, and I kind of think about the long arc the long history of the union movement. Where did we start? Where are we now? How did we get here? And what does that necessarily mean about where we're going? And so there's many different ways we can take this discussion, and I don't want to discount any of them. But for myself, obviously, I come to this as a ally and an observer of a challenge that you and other members are facing. But I see an intersection of this issue with a broader issue in the union movement in general in Canada, which is our predisposition to adopt the management culture, the business orientation of the corporations that we unionize. So, and I say corporation, that includes public sector, because as many of you know, governments have gone out of their way to model themselves after the private sector. You may be familiar with the term neoliberalism, and that reflects that tendency that government wants to act like a business. So unions have organized unionized businesses. Likewise, they unionize government or public sector that acts like a business. And for the union, again, like I said earlier, the union movement can't be immune from the social challenges at large or how society is made up at large, because unions are made up of people who exist in the communities. And likewise, what we see is that unions that are organizing large corporations, or in this as well as public sector, start to adopt the culture of those organizations themselves. And so partly this is indirect and informal and unintentional, but also there is some actual theory behind this. So unions do structure themselves intentionally. So, obviously these things happen over the course of many conferences and conventions, many debates and fights. And out of those struggles, the union establishes its constitution, its vision, its what is its mission, why is it here, and what is it doing for its membership. And there are competing theories for what a union is supposed to be. And the dominant theory in Canada, I've mentioned this in discussion with you before, is business unionism, which is also called service orientation unionism. And what that seeks to reflect is kind of a fee for service. So while we all know that the union movement is strongest when its membership is engaged, and the union wins its biggest battles when all of the members come together to fight, in the broad periods in between those very dramatic moments, our unions are a matter of, I pay a union fee and you give me a service. That takes the form of contract negotiation, and it takes the form of grievance handling and the little issues going day to day as an employee who runs into small and big struggles. And for your average member, they're paying a fee, they're getting a service in return. So I could go on forever about my concerns about what that structure does to the union movement, but to keep it focused on what we're talking about tonight. So you have a fee-for-service structure, and as a union, you need to administer this union body that has this implied fee-for-service structure. And that means that now you're an elected official, so you've been elected from amongst the membership, and you're now a full-time union leader and or committee of leaders, and you have to administer and make good on these promises. And as a society, Canada, we're a free market economy, we're a liberal democracy, and we are capitalist, and we naturally are going to be inclined to organize ourselves in ways which reflect that reality. So how that looks in the union is that as an elected leader, I am going to hire staff, I'm going to appoint managers of those staff or be the manager myself, and that relationship becomes a managerial relationship virtually indistinguishable from the manager relationships that we as unions seek to struggle in the workplace. We seek to pull back power from managers, make decision making in the workplace more democratic. That's not always the fights that unions have, but that is something that is a natural tendency within unions in Canada and the United States. And again, it's a very deep and complicated discussion that I don't think we want to dive into, or I'll leave it to you as to how far you want to go with the questions there. But I think what's important for this discussion is we see the problems of trying to move past racism in Canada in the workplace because of those hierarchical structures. And if it's true in the workplace that the management class is disproportionately white, that the management class makes decisions that are sometimes labeled as systemically racist or institutionally racist or structurally racist, and that the motivations for those decisions come from a motivation to maintain hierarchy, to extract value. It stands to reason that if that's true in the private sector, in the public sector, in the not-for-profit sector, then it must also be true to an extent in the unions. And it may look different in the unions, and the solutions, how you fight that, may look different in the unions. But we have to start from acknowledging the reality. And for myself, in struggling with these issues and what my role is, because I am also an elected union leader, and I seek to continue a long volunteer career in union affairs, and I want to be thinking critically about these things. I think that it's really important that we look at how are our unions, like, what's the underlying theory of what we're trying to do? What is the union? What is its relationship to the membership? And what is the membership's, in this case, what is the membership's relationship to the staff who serve them for a fee?
Thank you so much, Sean, for sharing those views. And these are very important conversations for a union and for the labor movement. And as Isabel shared earlier, that many unions, staff in many union positions are facing the same issues. So it's important for us to have these conversations. And, let's hear from a woman's perspective on all of these issues now. I'm going to bring on a union activist in Hamilton, and let's just hear from her. Welcome, Ingrid. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You look wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So, what is happening in the labor movement? What is happening in our union? And tell us, as a female activist, like, give us your perspective here, and as a member.
Yes. So, as a female and as a member, I definitely really echo a lot of the comments that Sean had previously about how we need to really look at the structures that we have in place in how our unions work now. And specifically this top-down service style structure. Because I think one of the best ways that we can combat some of these issues and make sure that we're more inclusive is to look at how we elect union leaders to ensure that we have a more diverse board at the top, right? I have had experiences, so I don't have experiences with racism because I am white, but I certainly have experienced sexism within the union on multiple occasions. And I find the best way to combat that is having those really difficult conversations, but not just this basic, we're going to train you and tell you why you should care about this, but sharing your lived experiences, sharing your traumas, sharing your past, and finding common ground to seek resolution, to move forward. I think through some of these things, we could have, real reform, and a lot of these issues would be resolved. Another thing that I think that unions really need to start doing is looking back towards the membership. The power of unions lies in the membership, and we ultimately, across all unions, the number one thing I hear at the local labor council, at other union rallies, within my own union, is a true concern about lack of engagement with the general membership and how that is affecting how the union works. And how we have, it's making it difficult to move forward in these conversations because we're having the same voices at the table. And what we need some new, fresh voices at the table, and we need to give them an opportunity to speak and share their experiences and learn. I personally got into this by going into committee work, which was empowering and wonderful, and gave me a very strong foundation for where I am now. But a lot of people who do committee work, the Women's Committee, for example, we feel like our voices are relegated to that box. And now we're in that committee and we've checked that box. But then when it comes to how we actually function as a union, because we check the box that we have a committee, we don't necessarily have that voice at the table at the highest level. And certainly that is a frustration. And so I see a lot of activists, smart, passionate people, now taking their time and effort and doing stuff outside of their union, which is wonderful. And they're creating their own space. But it would be wonderful if we could see what unions are founded on, some solidarity among these community groups, among small ones, larger ones, and workers' unions. Because ultimately, we're all fighting for the same thing. We're all fighting for, against these severe austerity measures. We're fighting for safe workplaces. We're fighting for fair housing. We're fighting for equality, right? There's so many great movements that have such strong voices. There's Black Lives Matters. There's, in Canada, Migwig and Wet'suwet'en protest. There have been the Me Too movement. Ultimately, those things are all about equality and all about breaking down some of these barriers that have built up. Specifically right now, we're looking at the neoliberal area, but for a long time now. And if we saw some solidarity between unions and those larger groups and smaller community groups, I think that would be a great way to get those voices heard and do some real learning about, and not just learning, but building up empathy among union staff, union leaders, members, about why these issues are important, as opposed to just, saying, my voice is important, please listen to me. It's no, this is why my voice is important. This is my lived experience. Let's build a strong foundation so that we can work together to combat these issues. I'm going to pass it back to you now, Nick. Nick, I can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio there.
Sorry about that. Are we back?
There we go.
All right. I said, I was saying that I think it's, you mentioned something that's very important there, Ingrid, and that is, we're in this same position because we're we have the same, we're dealing with the same old, and it's time, for for young activists to step forward and to take the lead and to be a part of the solution. I think that's very important in moving us forward in this situation, and in the labor movement in general. It is the younger ones who are going to fix the labor movement and to take us forward.
I mean, ultimately, it took us more than a generation to get here. Many of the union activists who I admire and taught me everything I know have lived. The neoliberal era started in the late 70s, right? We just hit the anniversary of Chile's democratic government being overthrown, and many would argue that that was the beginning of the neoliberal era. That was yesterday, September 11th. And we need to start looking at new ways to do things, and we need to start looking outside the box. And most importantly, we need to stop having these conversations in a combative way and look at them as an opportunity for learning. And we need to not be afraid to speak our truth. There's so many things that people are afraid to say, and there have been so much backlash. I remember one of my first experiences, well, not one of my first, but one along the way, as I was speaking out about something that I felt was sexist within the union. And I was told that if I felt that was an issue, that I should organize like the suffragettes. And I thought, oh, like, so frustrating to hear that within the labor movement, I'm being told to organize to combat sexism within the labor movement. And that was a bit of a watershed moment for me. Like, it launched me into some new things that I'm working on, and really helped me find my voice within the union. I also personally have experienced some trauma, and I have been very vocal about it. I have not been afraid to share it at all. But speaking about those with people and how that ties into my work in the labor movement. Specifically, when I went through trauma, I went through some domestic violence, and I always explain it this way. I say, I fell down and I was at my lowest point in my life, and the labor movement came along and they reached out a hand and they picked me back up again. And these are things that we talk about, but we don't talk about them within context. So we don't talk about, like, we do, but it's not personalized. So we say there's sick leave and there's disability leave, and we fought for your benefits, and we fought for your accommodations within the workplace, and we fought for equality in staffing. But if you don't have a story that talks about how those things, for me, saved my life, it's hard to understand. We're so disconnected from those wins. A lot of them are old. They still are important today. There's still work to be done because there are still cracks and there are still people falling down. And there's still so much, especially when we're talking about anti-Black racism, Indigenous issues, sexism. But those conversations are the most important, and they are, in my opinion, the foundation upon which we will build up, and my hope is a new era of stronger unions.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. And you've just heard from Ingrid Ridham's Building a Stronger Union. And thank you so much for sharing those words. I'm going to bring on Magalie Picard, Sister Magalie Picard. She's going to share with us. She's has some information here that she'd like to share with us. So, Sister Magalie. I believe you're on mute. Sorry, I can't hear you. It still says that you're on mute, so if you could just hit the mute button. It's showing that you're not muted, but I can't hear you. So just check the window there and see if there is anything that you have to approve to give your microphone access. That's okay. If this device is, just make sure that you don't have another window open. If you have another window open,
backstage. You're in the show.
all right. So you're live now. I can hear you. Thank you very much.
No,
Well,
thank you, and I'm so sorry for that. I don't have your talent, obviously, Nicholas. And now I'm with my phone, so I was trying with my iPad, but it was not working.
okay.
So sorry for that. Well, first of all, I want to thank you again. You're so professional with all this technology. I'm really amazed. And I really want to share and to comment. I heard Sean and I heard Ingrid. I want to thank them. And it's absolutely right. Not because we're a union that we're immune from having some systemic barriers and having some change to do. I want to share with you that when I saw the title of your Facebook tonight, I was pretty concerned, and I'm still pretty concerned because to hear that a lot of our staff are going through what you describe as microaggression, or they don't feel good when they come to work. I'm not going to say to you that I don't know. We have the chance to have people who are able to talk, people that share with us how they feel. We're going through, and I think the world now is more sensitive than ever, and listen and try to improve their practice. We do have systemic barriers inside PSAC, and we're working on it. I have to share with you that it's our top priority for our staff. And when I'm saying for our staff, the day that we're going to be an organization without those barriers, my God, we're going to be better to teach the employer, to challenge employers in this country. There's a lot going on right now. We are working, Chris and I, with our directors team. And am I going to tell you that everything that we're doing is perfect? Absolutely not. Do we have to learn? Absolutely. It's a collective work. We need to work together. I'm going to talk as an Indigenous woman. I have to tell you that I'm still surprised when people talk about me as a white person, a white woman. And because I don't have the traits, people ignore the fact that I fought my entire life for justice, for equity. People doesn't know where I'm coming from, and that's one thing. But to think that I'm not sensitive, that I don't know that there's a lot to do, it's not true. Am I concerned? I am, more than ever. You know, we are a union who have some big will. We've got through we are really sincere in the fact that we want to change. We want to be better. We need to change the structure. We need to change the organization by itself, the way that we are working with our staff, the way we're dealing with our members. But one thing is sure, it's a collective work. It's not two people, Chris and I, it's not the board of director who can do that on their own. Absolutely not. We need to work all together. And one thing is sure, the will is there. Are we going to make mistake? We will. Is it intentional? Absolutely not. Do we understand that it's something that, you know what, it's so easy to make commitments and just say, well, we're in support. It's unbelievable what's going on. And it's terrifying, the fact, what we hear from the States and everywhere. Yes, we can go there, but it's too easy just to say that we sympathize. Now we are at another level, and we will need our staff, our directors team, and our members to help us. One thing is sure, there's no enemy inside PSAC. There's a lot of people who wants to learn. I'm part of that. Even if I'm coming from an equity group, I still need to learn. I need to learn with my colleague and grow all together. We are ready to make some big change, and we're not afraid of that. Never been afraid to make some change. But in the same time, there's, when you do nothing, nobody can say to you, you made mistake. Because when you don't try something, you cannot make any mistake. When you try to explore and take risk and take management risk, because yes, we're a union. We also, and you mentioned it, we also employ 400 people. I would say around 400 people. Mm-hmm. So we have a role to play. It's not always easy. And we're going to make mistakes because at the end of the day, we're union activists. We're not employer. So we're trying our best. We have a lot to do. But in the same time, I heard you at the beginning, Nicholas, talking about some stuff that I'm really concerned about. When you say we had people on strike. We didn't have any staff on strike within PSAC over the last 10 years. Some component may have some strikes, but I think that it's been resolved in a way that there were a lot of communication and a lot of education and people, and it's okay. We've got staff who've got unions, and I'm proud of that. And I'm proud to deal with the unions of our staff. But at the end of the day, it's no difference when you're an employer in the union and outside. The only thing that it's really different is that who we are, where are we coming from? As a union activist, I can tell you that before we make a decision, we have to consider a lot and never forget where we're coming from. So I don't want to comment more about what you talked earlier about some comments that were made. I would love to, but I can't. You will understand that there's some, it's always, and because you are people who represent members, so that there's always more than one side in the story. So I'm not going to go there for sure. But one thing is sure, I want to reiterate that it's our top priority more than ever. If we don't take action now, shame on us, because it's now or never. We've got the support of our members. We've got the support of everyone. And we know, and I recognize that completely, frankly, tonight, we do have systemic barriers. We're no different than any other organization. We just look at the people who represent the board of directors. We look at the leadership, the directors team inside the organization. It's obvious. Nobody will challenge that. There are some systemic barriers. How to eliminate them, how to do it the right way? Well, we've got the will to do that. Now let's work together and with people who are honest, sincere, and no fake. And sometimes we will have to make decision independently what we're talking about. But when we're talking about moving forward, taking action, you've got our commitment, Chris and I, that this is where we want to go 100%. And also, I want to share with you that, yes, there's going to be some change proposed to the board of directors. There's going to be some change proposed at the next triennial convention of PSAC, because we want and we're serious about the way that we need to be better represent. We need to be the union that we've always been proud of. So we know that we've got some challenge, and this is where we are right now. So on that, I don't want to take more time. I was not a guest tonight, but when I heard and when I saw the title, just to let you know that this is something that I fought my entire life. And a lot of people heard about my story since I'm 12 years old. I'm fighting. I've been, and I'm sorry for the French, and not the French, but for the white people tonight. But I've been raised knowing that white people created the Indian Act. White people decided that if I don't marry a man indigenous, I'm going to lose my right. There's a lot that I've learned when I was really young, that I was discriminated because I was a woman, indigenous. And this is something that it's still hard for me to talk about it. I'm proud that we fought. We won a little bit of improvement inside the Indian Act, but we still have a lot to do. I saw the repercussion inside my workplace. I saw the fact that people are colorblind, and not everyone who can, well, testify, and not everyone is able to talk. But one thing is sure, we are doing everything we can right now. And I just want to share with everyone tonight that it's something that I take really seriously. That's why I'm here tonight. And I will never, never escape. I will never stay silent. I promised that a long time ago. Politically, I don't think I have nothing to win. When you're in a leadership position and you have to take decisions sometimes, it's way easier to just stay silent and like it's not my fault and I'm a Teflon woman and it goes on my back. But this is not who I am. So I will always be there to answer questions. I will always be there to react and share when I feel that there's something wrong. When I made a mistake, I will always recognize it. I'm not perfect, but I want the best. And anyway, I just want to thank you again for that.
Sure.
And those discussions are really important. So thank you, and thank you for the time you gave me tonight. Thanks, Nicholas.
Sure. Don't run away.
I'm not going anywhere.
I have a few questions for you.
Yes.
So Lisa Volland says that the will and the words are wonderful,
Yep.
but action is what we need, and that more commitments and promises make the change now. Now, keeping in line with those powerful words shared by Lisa, I'm not sure if she's a member of the public or who she is, but those are indeed powerful words, and I want to thank you for sharing those comments.
Yep.
And Sister Picard, you mentioned about systemic barriers existing in the union,
Yep.
but systemic barriers are not walls, are not the building. It's people.
Absolutely.
It is people that is perpetuating and upholding the system of barriers. So my question to you is, we're acknowledging that these barriers exist,
Yep.
but it is the people that are continuously upholding these barriers. So how do we address these? How do we break down these barriers? It's not the 223 or 243 Gilmore. It's not that building, right?
No.
It's people. It's you and me, people.
Yep.
that are causing and inflicting harm on
Yep.
other people. So how do we address this when it's us?
Well, it's easy for me to talk to you about that because it's a constant discussion that we've got with our directors team since months. So what we're looking, to be honest with you, so we're looking why people are not going through our competition. We target 75% of our position throughout the regions, the 7 regions of PSAC in the last 3 years, 75%. And it's still a challenge to hire people who are coming from equity group. So now what we're looking, so why people are not interested to work for PSAC? What happened? Why? What are the reasons? And now we are learning that because they cannot identify themselves, they don't see themselves inside our organization. So what we're doing now, so we're putting in place some new protocols where we're going to have mentorship, where we will be able to work with racialized, with indigenous people, disabled people, that they won't be afraid to come with us because we're going to put them with someone who can help them to go through our organization. And that's only one part. There's also, where are we posting those competition? Are we going at the right place? Are we talking to the right people? It's nice just to put them on the website. Maybe it's not the right place to go to be attractive for people coming from equity group. There's a lot of recommendation. There's a lot of ideas. So now what we're trying to do, because there's some that we tried in the past, I'm not here to say, oh my God, it's the first time that we look at it and this is now that we want to do that. It's been years that we're struggling with that. You've got in your region Sharon D'Souza, my colleague. It's been years that she's a strong activist saying, I want to see PSAC reflecting our entire membership. And this is what we're working on. So we've got a lot of recommendation. And now we're at this point where we bring them and we are working with our board of directors to put them in place. Like Sister Linda said, Lisa, I don't have my glasses. And my phone is really small. But words are not enough. We need to put measures in place seriously. And we've got everything that we need to be able to do that. We've got equity group inside our membership, people who knows exactly what we need to do to be more attractive. And this is those people that we need to listen. We need to listen, understand, and make it happen. And this is what we're doing right now. So we're looking at a lot of different recommendations. The one that we're working on right now are not the most easiest one. It's ask more inside the organization. We just hired a new person, anti-oppression person, Darlene, that help us with that. But we also think that we will need more than one person to be able to help us to go through everything we need to achieve. So I know that words are not enough. And I'm saying that everywhere since over 20 years. Now that I'm in the position of leadership, I have the chance to work with a president that is so inclusive. He said it and he repeated it to our directors team, MBOD. This is his top priority. And this is exactly on what we're working now. And I cannot share stuff that the board of directors didn't already vote on, but you will see, and our member will see, real decision, real action in our own organization that I think will answer some of the question, some of the problem, not all of them. For sure not. And it's not true that century of injustice can be solved like that. And if somebody comes here tonight and say, I've got the solution, I know exactly what we have to do, and it's easy to do, but please put this person and let me know who, and I'm going to talk because I want to hear about that. We're willing to improve, and it's sincere for myself personally. I think that it's going to correspond correctly, exactly to what I'm trying to do since so many years. But I know that it's going to take time, and it's going to take people who's going to work with us. And they will, like I said earlier, it's a collective work. And if we work together, the day that we're going to fight against us, we won't achieve anything. And I'm saying that because it's the truth. We are not looking at our organization with targeting and say, you're bad, you shouldn't have done that. We've got the will right now to make stuff change. We have a really strong board of directors right now, that they are more than committed to see some change inside our organization. So for all those reasons, I'm telling you, there's going to be some change really soon. Is it going to be perfect at the beginning? I'm sure not. We have to learn. And we don't have any excuse now for not moving forward. Absolutely not.
Mr. Picard, let me ask you that question. So
Yes.
you said it correctly. There are no excuses moving forward. Let me ask you this direct question.
Yes.
Does our union value the different identities of our hired staff, or are our hired staff being asked to leave their identities behind, who they are?
I know where you want to bring me, Nicholas, and I know you've got information, but unfortunately you have like a part and really slight information. What I want to share with you.
You can answer in general. I'm not trying to
answer it right. You know me, I'm going to be fully transparent. The answer is more than yes. When you talk about this newspaper between us that was done by our staff, you know what? It didn't happen suddenly. We more than support that. You know, we want our people to talk. It's not a newspaper coming from the staff. It's coming from PSAC. Who's paying for that? It's PSAC members. And it's the leadership who support that 100%. So please, when you say that some people were microaggression, I don't know what you said exactly, because they talk in the newspaper, I can assure you 200% that is not true. Never, ever. Okay? That has nothing to do with who we are. So that's really hit me hard when you said that, because I know there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of stuff. And you know what? There's a lot of our people, a lot of us are hurt from what we live in our life. What a lot of us are hurt by in the society where we're living in 2020. And I don't know if it's part of that, but sometimes there's some, I don't know how to say it, but I think that we have to pay attention and we have to ask questions before going with assumptions. And I can tell you one thing, our staff, more than ever, we participate, Chris and I, in a conference call with a union of our member that we passed 2 times 4 hours with racialized staff of PSAC. We worked together on the webinar. It was fantastic. Chris and I heard for 8 hours our staff talking about their self-experience within PSAC. We cried. Sometimes we laughed and we shared joke. But you know what? We've learned so much. And it just happened during this pandemic. I'm not talking about something that happened years ago. We just went through that. So there's no repercussion because people talk. Because my God, I would be in trouble if I cannot talk from who I am. Nobody's gonna muzzle me because I'm an Indigenous. Never gonna happen. And it's the same with their entire staff. So there's a lot, and I know that everybody tonight are probably activists, knows that we're talking about something the entire world now is really concerned about what's going on. Everybody want to help. Maybe sometimes we don't take the right way to do it, but everybody wants to. And one thing I can tell you, Nicholas, I hope that people understand that even if we're not perfect, that we're going to make some risk. We're going to take some risk. We're going to move forward. We're going to bring some stuff that not everybody's going to be happy with, but we're going to move forward anyway, because it's a learning process. We have to do a lot of education. We still have to learn a lot, but we're going to do it 100% sure. And it's not the politician who's talking, it's the Indigenous woman who's talking tonight. It's something that you cannot touch me more than when you talk about equity. It's impossible. So just to let you know that tonight, I agree. This organization has a lot to do, but we're in right now. We've got some solution, we've got some ideas, and we've got a team who help us to bring them and to put them in place. And I'm really proud of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members as well as staff use our union as a replication of the workplace.
Yeah.
With a lot of racism involved. Is our union a racist organization?
No. Yes, there is racism, absolutely. When you talk about the organization, do you talk about our directors board of director? I think that everybody needs education. Everybody. Even if I'm coming from an equity group, I do need education. I need to learn more about my colleague, about my friends. Yes.
Well, let me interrupt you for a quick second,
Okay.
Mr. Picard, because
Yes.
just recently one of our components boycotted our union's efforts to hold anti-racism workshop, right? Issued a damning statement to boycott an anti-racism workshop. So how do we address these issues? Because especially as racialized people, we feel as if our union and a lot of our components are by far and large racist.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all,
they might say something nice and fancy words and issue a statement here and there, where their actions are by far and large demonstrate that racism.
I want to be fair tonight, Nicholas. This component you're talking about, before that PSAC posed that webinar, this same component president asked their employer to have a webinar with their entire staff, anti-racism webinar. So the component by itself is not racist at all. There's a story behind the reason why that component asked their members for not participating. Everybody know, and you were part of a discussion with the two facilitators that we hired to do this webinar. Something happened, something really unfortunate, and we took a decision. We changed the decision because people said, no, we need it. And but something happened with a member of that component. And I completely understand that component who felt really attacked, because it's not the first time that PSAC, and we were talking about peace officers, and there were a lot of commitment, and not commitment, but statement that we made where they didn't recognize themselves. And they say, my own union treat me as a racist person, and they cannot believe that. They said, I'm paying the dues to this organization, and I'm not racist. We've got racialized people inside that same component who sent me email personally to say, I cannot believe that my union make me feel like a racist person when I raised 3 young Black kids, and my own union put those statements. So there's a lot of frustration that we all need to understand. But to say that this component is racist, no. And I've got the proof of that. That same component, before that webinar, asked our program officers, can you help me to talk to this employer that is a terrible employer, to give training to our staff, to our members on anti-racism? We've got all that in writing, Nicholas. I'm not saying that tonight to try to make them look good. That's the truth. But unfortunately, something happened.